Heading south down the east coast of Florida, our final destination should be Key West for the lighthouse there. We stopped en route in Key Largo and discovered behind the Holiday Inn Hotel, on the waterway there, was the African Queen, the boat from the 1951 movie starring Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn. Also, before making African Queen, Humphrey Bogart, along with Lauren Bacall, made a movie in Key Largo entitled Key Largo, and that was 1948, and that's a crime drama set in a hurricane. Then when we left there, the first stop was Shell World on our left, which is a great big shop dealing in everything to do with the sea. Well worth a look in there. Next stop further down the road was in a place called Marathon, and on your right is the Turtle Hospital. This place has been set up to rehabilitate damaged turtles and where possible put them back into nature. This also is a lovely place to stop, and you get up close and personal with turtles you wouldn't otherwise see that close. As you leave Marathon, off to your left, about 7 miles out to sea, on the Florida Reef, on an area called Coffin's Patches Shoal, is located Sombrero Key Lighthouse. US Route 1 from Miami to Key West is 113 miles, or approximately 182 kilometers long, and its route is through the Florida Keys to Key West. It started life as a railway bridge, which was completed in 1912, and then was partially destroyed in a 1935 hurricane. Just south of Marathon, you eventually come to the 7-mile bridge, which is what we're on now, where you look to your right and see portions of the original bridge. Then we eventually arrived in Key West. It's classed as an island city, part of the Florida Keys archipelago. It's also Florida's southernmost point, and it lies roughly 90 miles north of Cuba, so about 144-45 kilometers. Our first destination was the lighthouse. Key West Lighthouse, built 1825. The present tower is 1847. Height 86 feet or 26 meters. Light 1 white flash every 24 seconds. Deactivated 1969. Open to the public. The first Key West Lighthouse was 65 feet tall, about 20 meters, built in 1825, and it had 15 whale oil lamps in 15-inch or 380mm reflectors, and this was located at Whitehead Point. So basically you had reflectors shaped like sort of like a wok, but the inside would be reflective, and on the outside would have been some sort of oil lamp, and it would have been a fixed light, no flash. Then in 1846 a hurricane destroyed it, and then in 1847 the new light was constructed in its present position, and as it was built on a small hill, it was only 50 foot tall, so 15 meters, with 13 whale oil lamps in 21-inch or 530mm reflectors. 1858 third order Fresnel lens was installed. 1872 tower raised by 5 feet, then roughly 20 years later raised to its present height to clear the big trees that were growing around it. In 1915 it was further upgraded and acetylene light was added. This system was very efficient and very reliable, so the place could soon be automated. It was a system that could be made to wink on and off, so you get the appearance of a flashing light with that system. The Coast Guard then took control in 1939, and the lighthouse was then deactivated in 1969. The Key West Art and Historical Society was given control from that time of the station, and in 1990 it was opened as a lighthouse stroke museum. Instructions for the lighthouse keepers at Key West Florida Lighthouse, written in 1848 by the then principal keeper Barbara Mabriti. 1. You are to light the lamps every evening at sun setting and keep them continually burning bright and clear till sun rising. 2. You are to be careful that the lamps and lanterns are constantly kept clean and in order, particularly to be careful that no lamps, wood or candles be left burning anywhere so as to endanger fire. 3. In order to maintain the greatest degree of light during the night, the wicks are to be trimmed every 3 hours, taking care that they are exactly even on the top, and the flame must be maintained at its full height without smoking or endangering the glass. 4. You are to keep an exact account of the quantity of oil received from time to time, the number of gallons, quarts, gills consumed during each quarter, and deliver a copy of the same to Superintendent at the close of the respective quarter on the 31st of March, 30th of June, 30th of September and 31st of December in each year, with an account of the quantity on hand at the time. 5. You will treat with civility and attention such persons as may visit the lighthouse under your charge, and as may conduct themselves in an orderly manner. 6. You will not absent yourself from the lighthouse at any time without first attaining consent of the superintendent, unless the occasion be so sudden and urgent as not to admit an application to that officer, in which case, by having a suitable substitute, you may be absent for the space of 24 hours. Signed, Collecting Officer Barbara Mabriti, 15th of July, 1848. That may sound rather strict in today's context, but over in Britain, during a similar time frame, we also had strict rules that were imposed. One of the first lighthouses I was sent to as a young keeper over in England was off to the Longstone Lighthouse up in the northeast coast of England in Northumberland, where there was a group of islands called the Farne Islands. And this was the famous lighthouse where Grace Darling, where she and her dad rowed out to rescue some passengers in the middle of a great big storm where the lifeboat from the mainland couldn't even venture out. This was in 1838, and the rowing was done basically in an open rowing boat, and the lifeboat would have been similar, powered by oars and sails in those days. And I found in an order book on the lighthouse a piece about tallow candles. And tallow candles are made from animal fat that's rendered down and made into the candles. And this was the form of lighting that lighthouses used back in those days. And the bosses that came on their annual visit to inspect the lighthouse wrote in the book. I'm going to have to paraphrase because I can't remember the exact wording, and I didn't write anything down in those days. That during their visit they discovered that the amount of tallow candles in the store was way below what should have been. On further investigation, they discovered that during periods of time when the storms wouldn't allow the boats to come out to restock the lighthouse with provisions, that the hungry keepers or families were eating the candles. Then in great big capital letters and heavily underscored, "This practice must stop forthwith." So, starve to death but don't eat our candles. Nice. It's like a floating staircase. It's not attached to the wall at all. At some point in this lighthouse's lighting career, there would have been an oil light upstairs that was driven by kerosene/paraffin, and this was the oil storage for that. Keeper's Quarters Cottage, completed in 1887. This building, the second on the property, was the home of the Key West Lighthouse's principal and assistant lighthouse keepers and their families. The principal keepers who served here were Michael Mabriti, 1826 to 1832, Barbara Mabriti, 1832 to 1864, Frederick W. Anderson, 1864 to 1865, James Ingraham, 1865 to 1867, Henry M. Crane, 1867 to 1868, Peter Crocker, 1868 to 1870, John Carroll, 1870 to 1889, Mary Amanda Carroll, 1889 to 1889, William A. Bethel, 1889 to 1908, Mary Eliza Bethel, 1908 to 1913, Merrill Andrew Bethel, 1913 to 1914. As you can see from that list, there was a few lady lighthouse keepers that served at this station. The first one was the wife of Michael Mabriti, who died of yellow fever in 1832, and Barbara took over until 1864 as the principal keeper. She raised 6 children on the station. Then later on you had Barbara's granddaughter, Mary Amanda Fletcher. She married a John Carroll, and he died in 1889 of typhoid. She became the principal keeper, but died of the same disease just a few weeks later. Then you had William Bethel as principal keeper, and he served till 1908 when he died. And upon William's death, his wife Mary Elizabeth was promoted from assistant to head keeper or principal keeper, and served in this role until 1915. Bear in mind that this by no means is the definitive list of all the keepers that have ever served at this lighthouse. And perhaps as you walk around this building, which was the quarters for these people, you can think of what life used to be like back all those years ago. To have a decent principal keeper in charge of a lighthouse is imperative in my view. Happy keepers, happy lighthouse, everything sort of comes together into a full working unit. No aggravation on station means the place runs efficiently and well. The big lens on display here is a first order Fresnel lens which originally belonged to the Sombrero Key Lighthouse. I was once on a lighthouse where I had just spent 2 hours cleaning a similar size lens to this. Came downstairs, the principal keeper inspected it, found a fingerprint and sent me back up. I then spent another 2 hours cleaning it, never found the fingerprint, and he never sent me to re-clean a lens again. So I often wonder, was there really a fingerprint at all? These are the things you sometimes had to endure under training. As you can see from the following photographs, Key West is a delight to walk around. Once you get free from the main shopping street, which is Duval Street, it gets very quiet. Duval Street is there if you want to party in the evening, or all the bars, plus all the shops you can think of are in Duval Street. You also have Mallory Square, which is another great area to visit. All roads seem to lead there. And of course you have the big draw that seems to be queued out most of the day, and that's the southernmost point, buoy or buoy. One thing you will notice everywhere, there are chickens, roosters, cockerels, call them what you like, but they're everywhere. They are totally free range in Key West. While this holiday stroke me looking at lighthouses in between was being planned over in the UK, a trip to the Dry Tortugas at the end of our holiday was planned. Before the planning stage finished, my wife and I decided we didn't fancy 2.5 hours sea trip to get there, and obviously 2.5 hours to get back in an open sea. The other two in our party did. They wanted a snorkel and all the wonderful things that the Dry Tortugas are famous for. So the wife and I wandered round Key West, and then on that particular day it was a torrential rainstorm from nowhere. my daughter and son-in-law that were on this trip, obviously unaware of what the weather was going to be like. They'd been practicing snorkeling for weeks and weeks prior to this, and then they had to undergo this horrible weather conditions. So to say the Dry Tortugas were very misnamed on this particular day is an understatement. So snorkeling was out. So what they did instead, in between sheltering from the stormy weather, was to capture the following photographs and a talk by the guide on the two lighthouses that you will see. Garden Key Fort Jefferson Lighthouse, built 1876, height 25 feet or 7.5 meters. Light was one flash every 2 seconds. Deactivated 1921. Not open to the public, but the grounds are. Dry Tortugas, Loggerhead Key Lighthouse, built 1858, height 157 feet or 48 meters. Light was one white flash every 20 seconds. Deactivated 2014. Not open to the public, but the grounds are.
So he sends orders down to the engineer here. He's like, hey, while you're building the fort, build a lighthouse. He replied back, I don't know how to build a lighthouse. He said, easy, make it round, make it 157 feet tall. So they took bricks from here, they went over there in 1856 and started building that lighthouse. It was lit up in July of 1858. Could be seen from 20 miles away. This lighthouse in 1872 was destroyed. At that time they turned it into a harbor light. 1872 it was destroyed by a hurricane. That lighthouse, the top 20 feet, suffered damage. So they sent the master masons from over here, over there to do temporary repairs. They were going to build a new lighthouse. They went over, and when they got there, they're like, well, we just can't take the top 20 feet off. There's a light sitting up here. So they went in and vertically, they removed the bricks one at a time, replaced them, all the damaged one, and then they did some extra support behind them. And they finished their temporary repairs. A hurricane came through. That lighthouse suffered 0 damage. And that lighthouse has been there since 1858. And it's weathered every storm and hurricane has passed by here. So pretty cool that the guy that built a lighthouse that didn't know how to build one is still standing. Coast Guard finally decommissioned it in 2014. I figured if you don't have GPS by now, well, that's your problem.
Go to the left. Oh, come on, the cistern lid. So this is, I think they they say there was going to be 2 but there was only 1, or did they say there was only 2 but meant to be 4? But anyway, you like a gumball machine, have crazy amounts of cannons all rolled down, load them from the other end, and then you heat it up, make them crazy hot, and then use some giant tongs to get them into the cannon. So you're firing cannon shot that is red hot. Hopefully to set it alight whilst you're carrying the ships. Yeah, you load all the cannon in there and it just slides down. So they had all this brick, and then they also poured a shit ton of cement. And as you can see, it's a mixture of a load of coral, so you can see coral. They said it had coral, lime, cement and salt water, and it's all breaking away. You can see all the different bits. Can we see any fishies? That's a long way down. That's the moat, which the toilets kicked out into, and apparently we thought tide would completely empty the moat and then refill it. It didn't, it only did it about halfway, which meant all the poo got stuck in the moat, and of course, in typical fashion, the slaves had to deal with it, and the prisoners. Yeah, the moat got full of poo. Lovely. And over there in the distance, there's Loggerhead Lighthouse.